And remain your election command center. Welcome to this all-important conversation, and it is on education. Education has been very topical going into this election. That has been the case in every other election gone by. But this time around, because of the policies that were introduced by this particular administration and the impact it's had, education received a lot of prominence in the manifestos of the major political parties. And indeed, if you look at the minor political parties as well, you can mention same. Now, the right to education is guaranteed in Ghana's 1992 Constitution, which states in Article 38(2), and I'm going to read that to you specifically, that the government shall, within 2 years after Parliament first meets after coming into force of this Constitution, draw up a program for the implementation within the following 10 years for the provision of a free, compulsory, universal, basic education. Free, compulsory, universal, basic education. And that's the F-cube. And the emphasis of this conversation, the basis of what we're going to be talking about this afternoon, is on how free, how compulsory, how universal will our basic education be if we hazard that thought of privatizing basic education in this country because of the question of quality. And that's an issue we're going to be getting into, because clearly from analysis and research, public basic education juxtaposed with the private basic education, quality is always the differentiating factor. Now, can we guarantee quality in our public education, basic education, if we privatize it only? If not, what are some of the alternatives to guarantee and improve on the quality of public basic education as against what it is now? I've been joined in the studio this afternoon by the chairman of the Ghana Education Service, Michael Nsowa. He is joining us in the studio, and he's the chairman of the Council of the Ghana Education Service. And then also here with me in studio is Richard Kwashi Kovi, who is an executive member of the Campaign Against Privatization and Commercialization of Education in this country. And he's also a committee member of the National Association of Graduate Teachers, NAGRAT. Joining me via Zoom is Professor George K.T. Odro, Professor of Educational Leadership at the University of Cape Coast. And then also joining us via Zoom as well, and Alhaji Zakaria Sulemana is with the West Africa Regional Education Advisor, Oxfam International. Gentlemen, good afternoon to you. Thank you very much for joining us. And this to you via Zoom and in studio as well. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
First off, I mean, in as much as we acknowledge that there is a problem, the implementation of free, compulsory, universal basic education is fraught with the issue of quality, and that's outlined. Should we even be thinking about privatizing basic education in this country? I'll start off with you, Mr. Nsowa.
Thank you very much. Maybe I want to take.
That's fine.
Thank you very much once again. It's a question that I don't know anybody will want to think about, privatizing basic education, because as you quoted, the Constitution specifically says. The Constitution specifically says basic education is free and compulsory. And maybe until or unless this part of the Constitution is amended, there's no way any government would think about, privatizing education, and therefore making it difficult for some people to access basic education, which is a right. The basic is a right because that is what everybody is entitled to. Any child that is born in Ghana is entitled to this basic education, which is free and compulsory.
And it's evident, at least from the records, that we have made some good progress in increasing the national level of access to basic education. It's about 95% as far back as 2017.
Yeah.
But however, this statistics does not reflect the situation among certain geographical areas and the marginalized groups, something we're going to be getting into. So if you do agree, and I think I'm going to come to you, Mr. Kofi, on this one as well, that for as long as the constitutional provision states that basic education is supposed to be free, public basic education is supposed to be free and compulsory, we shouldn't even be thinking about the idea of privatizing it.
Yeah, thank you. That is how, on the surface, you want to look at it. But the issue is that we've noticed for some time, as far back as 2013, 2015, so we decided to go into a research to investigate the situation. So if you notice, there's a global response campaign all over the world, and countries like Uganda, Kenya even stood against this. So we noticed that as part of that, just as we said, education should be free, compulsory, and available to all. That also means that equal opportunities should be created for all children, as wherever they are, irrespective of their geographical location. And that is why, as part of our policies, we say that within every kilometer radius, there should be a public school. So this is where the privatization issue comes in. You realize that because education has become free and the cost component is going up, the political class is beginning to share that responsibility to the private actors. So what they do is that those areas, like we take, for example, Kasua and 8 environs, you go there, there are no public schools there. So if I have a child within that enclave and is supposed to access education, I have no choice but to send that child to a private school. That is why the privatization issue is coming in. So it means that government is relenting on its mandate to make public education available to every child of school-going age. And now they are being forced with no other alternative than to access private education. And then we have these multinationals who are sponsoring and are behind this agenda. For example, U.S. Agency for International Development in 2019 published a report trying to look at how they can sponsor private actors to set up low-cost profit schools. And so if these agencies are supposed to be supporting our budget to fund public education, and they are thinking of sponsoring private individuals to more or less engage in private education, then they are increasing inequality within the education sector. Because when you look at the assessment, they are saying that they categorize low-cost profit schools as schools that charge around 155 Ghana cedis to 300 Ghana cedis per term. And that is what they take. Then on daily basis, they pay between 3 cedis, 50 pesos to 5 cedis for feeding and other activities. Now, for our colleagues in the rural setting, and even the urban poor, how many of them can afford this? So it means that if there's a public school there, they would have chosen that option. But then, because there's no public school there, they have no option than to what? Access that education. And then one thing I started with Omega School franchise, a concept that say pay as you go. And so what happens is that the children, they say, oh, we want to help you. See, there's no public school here, we want to help you.
Pay as you go.
Pay as you go. So what they say is that what they do is that, oh, we want to help you with school, but because you know you are poor, you don't have money, you pay on daily basis.
Yes, so I know that system is very rife around the slum areas, especially in the Greater Accra region.
Yeah.
Around the Graphic Road area, there's a community there that I recall we visited a school there, and they pay 5 cedis a day. Some of them pay 2 cedis a day, and the schools collect it, and they pay the teachers on a daily basis, like a wage to them, not a salary at the end. But I think that the fundamental issue here has been agreed, that it's a constitutional provision. It is a right, you see, and so what? You emphasize on the fact that basic education is a right. Under no circumstance should any child be deprived of basic education. Quality You see, and the emphasis of this conversation now is on quality, because I think that we all agree that quality at the public basic school level is a problem. And that's why I bring in Professor Joe. Professor Joe, can you hear me now? Hello, I don't know if you can unmute, because I can't hear you. If we agree,
oh, thank you.
yes, if we agree, thank you. If we agree that it is a right for every child to have basic education, not just have just any education, but quality basic education, public basic education, why has implementation been so poor?
Okay, thank you very much. To begin with, I greet my colleagues, and especially Sensonwa. Now, why? For me, it's a question of prioritization. That is one of the things, prioritization, and then also laxity in terms of continuation. Now, we know, like building, if you don't lay a very strong foundation for a building, its sustenance becomes very questionable. And so basic education as a right. That is why the Constitution does not qualify the free education component of basic education with progressive. Everybody must have it. You know, so I would say it's a question of prioritization, of policy prioritization, and then commitments. That is why we have the challenge. I spoke to a certain woman who approached me, that was somewhere 5 years ago, and approached me for help, assistance to pay school fees. And this happened in my town, Agunasa. And she needed money to pay school fees. Then I asked, school fees for what? Then she said, school fees for a child who is attending a certain primary school in the town. I asked her, but we have public schools here, they don't pay fees. Why do you have to send your child? And this illiterate woman told me, Prof, public schools no one tried it. So you see that the element of quality is key to the extent that even poor parents who value education would want to take the risk of selling things, going for loans to ensure that their children are sent to the private school because of quality. So if government will prioritize basic education, increase the budgetary allocations to basic education, I think we'll be resolving some of these issues.
And Mr. Sulemana, let me bring you in as well, if you can hear me, because we have identified the problem. In fact, it's something that we know already. And that's why I want this conversation to be as progressive as possible, that the quality is an issue. Implementation of the free compulsory universal basic education appears to be perpetuating what I have described as an educational apartheid, where the rich find quality in private schools, leaving the poor in low-cost private schools and poorly funded public schools. If we believe and we accept what the Constitution says, that it is a right for every child to have basic education, public quality basic education, what should we be demanding of government if we are against privatizing the public basic schools? Mr. Slubana.
Thank you very much. My greetings to my co-panelists and then the viewers. I think the starting point is the point Professor Odro made, which is about adequate investment into the provision of basic education. Governments will have to prioritize this and spend at least 7% of the GDP to provide education. And now the tricky thing is here. It is not all about providing the money. It is about the efficient utilization of the public resources to ensure that quality education is delivered in the public basic schools. The question you will ask yourself, just pick any private school at random and look at the quality of teachers in those schools. Very often, they are not as well trained as the teachers in the public school. And why would the public school that has better teachers be performing relatively poorly? So one of the areas that needs attention is teacher motivation and teachers' continuous professional development. The critical issues that follow is also to ensure that there is adequate supervision, not only in schools that are located in urban areas, but across the nook and cranny of this country. The third thing I would want policymakers to pay attention to is to spend money to engender accountability for the quality of learning outcomes. Very often we leave accountability to the relationship between a teacher and the head teacher or the circuit supervisor. That is okay, that is needed, that is very critical because that is where teachers get technical support to do better on the job. On the other side, we need to involve citizenry. We need to involve parents. We need to take them through a process where they are able to appreciate what quality means. And they should be able to engage with teachers, students, and education stakeholders and ask questions with a view to ensuring that the right teaching and learning goes on in schools and that the type of learning outcomes we are expecting in children is not only measured in pass rates, but also how it transforms every learner to become an active citizen and be able to play his role or her role in society in which he or she lives. So the biggest proposal I will make is that our governments will have to prioritize, spend more money, but make sure that the money that is spent is efficiently used. You should not go to an urban area and find teachers who do not have classrooms to teach. When you go to a public basic school in a rural area, you find one teacher teaching more than one classroom. Those are some of the inequities in our system that is not making us make the best use of the resources that we are putting into our educational system. The other thing is we have international financial institutions that are promoting the low-fee profit schooling. And they are engaging with our governments across Africa and convincing them of the need for this.
Mr. Solomana,
our narrative.
So here's what I want to do. With the first part of your recommendations, I want us to deal with that because that proposal by the international donor agencies is a whole subject I want to get into right after this because I don't want us to box the two together. You know, if you agree with me, we could go on that same path. Thank you very much. Mr. Soa, you are the chairman of the council of the Ghana Education Service. What have you done about this age-old problem of the low or poor quality at the basic level of our education in this country?
Thank you very much. Let me say that Ghana has come a long way. In fact, what we are seeing now is far, far better than what some of us were used to.
The society has to improve. There has to be
exactly.
progress.
My colleague here was saying, you know, I think it was part of the Basic Education Improvement Program, to BESIP, which otherwise is called FQ.
Yes.
The actual improvement program is called BESIP, BESIP, Basic Education Sector Improvement Program.
Yes.
Now, like I was saying, I used to walk 6 miles like this student who had just performed wonders from his or her village. But now, we made this provision that no child should walk more than a kilometer. There are children in Accra, they don't walk, but they travel more than 10 miles to go to school. That's a question of choice. A parent lives in Tema, but prefers the child to come to Association International. That's about 10 miles. So that's a question of choice of parents.
Yes.
Which school they think will help them. Now, as I said, we've come a long way. So many issues have been thrown about quality. When we talk of quality, what exactly are we talking about?
And that's another thing that Solomon talked about.
Exactly. So
Quality of teachers.
look, if you
Access
say
to
there are
the-
areas, if you want to stick to the 1 kilometer walk, then you're going to have situations where you build a school. I'm not saying we should not build a school, but apart from taking into consideration the short distance that they should walk, you may not find enough children to fill any classroom. If you are talking about all the villages, so you need to also modify this claim a bit and say that which is a central point to a number of villages. You see, so it is not always the case that because we say children should not walk more than a kilometer, you want to put up a school in every hamlet, because that is practically impossible.
I think that's fair. But I mean, the issue of quality goes beyond this.
No, I haven't finished.
The quality of the teachers, access to textbooks, and many other things.
Exactly.
I mean, furniture.
Exactly.
We see situations, in fact, the stories we've done many times in the rural communities. I was in Agona, Konyako DA Primary.
Yeah.
That's where I did my national service.
Yes.
Children sit on the floor
Exactly.
to study. And they're not alone in this. When you go across the country, you see the same situation.
That's why I said we've come a long way, because now the situation you are describing, I think there's some improvement, but we are not there yet. I'm not saying we'll be able to overcome all the challenges that we face, because if you talk about quality, so many things like you are enumerating. What is the type of teacher that you have? Do you even have teachers at all?
Absolutely.
If you don't have teachers, do you have all the textbooks or whatever writing material that the children will require? Now, we talk about motivation of the teacher. Mr. Suleiman talk about where a teacher is not paid for months. What do you expect? The teacher is not paid. Yeah, the teacher has been appointed, given appointment letters and so on, but it's not paid. So whether the teacher is always present in the classroom or not, the motivation is not there to teach. So you need to overcome all these things. And that is why I say we've come a long way. Everything is being done. I think government after government will want to see that you move a step further. But in a situation where these things are not, for instance, the teacher who is not paid and doesn't go to school, whose fault it is? So for me,
Whose fault is it? I want you to answer that question.
whose fault is it? Yeah, I'm coming to that. For me, 3 pillars for a successful education is access, quality, and management. Access, quality, and management. Because the person who should see to it that there's a teacher there, the teacher is being paid, is being taken care of. If he or she is not doing his or her work, then there's a problem.
And so, but on these 3 levels, the access, quality, and management is where I'll move as well to Mr. Covey on this. In terms of access, I think that at least the records are clear that at the basic level, access, as of 2017, we're about 95% access. I don't know what the current figure is now. Mr. Zoa, do you have it? As at now, what's the access rate of basic education in this country?
You see, you are talking about, you use the figure 95% enrollment.
Enrollment. Yes.
When you say 95%, it means there are still about 5%,
Who are
of children
still not-
school-going age who are not
not
there.
able to.
So let's use that as a
95% enrollment as of 2017. But this statistic does not reflect the situation among certain geographical areas and marginalized groups. And I'm getting into it because I have the information. According to the Voluntary Service Organization, about 15% of children who enroll in primary school drop out before the end of junior high school, meaning there still exists over 350,000 children saddled with issues of quality learning outcome, which present a very huge challenge, for government. So in as much as you would have this huge 95% getting, they get truncated at a point. They're not even able to get to junior high school. So it defeats the purpose, because junior high school is part of basic education in this country.
And when you say basic, it means those children should terminate their education at
the junior high school level.
Yeah.
But then we don't have it. Over 350,000 of them are not able to even go to junior high school.
You want me to continue?
Yes, Mr. Zoa.
Yeah. So you are looking at that, the 95. Let's say we are asked for the 5%. Why do we have so much dropout? And do we have so much dropout these days? Because, one, in order to prevent them from dropping out, there are a number of reasons that can account for that. Yes. One reason is the economic levels of their parents. So they have only, if they are lucky, we call it 1 square meal a day. Otherwise, for the rest of the day, they're going hungry until their parents return from farm to bring something for them to eat.
Because they enjoy the school feeding program.
No, yeah. So that's why government intervention is the school feeding program, which is meant to prevent children from dropping out. Others, uniform, because teachers will insist that you are properly uniformed before they will let you sit in the classroom. So that also accounted for the introduction of the free. In fact, the original concept was that we should identify those who don't have uniform or whose parents cannot afford. I've been a district director before, and I implemented it. You need to go around all the villages and identify those who are not in school and the reason for not being in school. As I said, some may be, there's not enough food in the house. Two, the issue of uniforms, because Ghana, we have a specified uniform. Even if the child has something that the child takes to church every Sunday, the child cannot use this. But the poverty level of the parents said that they cannot buy additional uniform. These are things that need to be looked at.
I see. And because that uniform bit that you mentioned is important, because then there are suggestions that the uniform should not be a reason why a child should be denied education. I mean, I know in some rural communities where they don't necessarily bar the children from coming to the classroom because they don't have uniforms.
Yeah,
right.
The specified uniform.
I mean, some of them wear mufti and they still go. They allow them to go. So you had a targeted approach to the provision of the free uniforms. It wasn't a wholesale thing.
Or removing all these barriers to education.
I see. Mr. Kofi, so analyzing all of these interventions, how has it really helped in addressing the issues that impact on the quality of basic education?
Talking about quality, I don't know, when it comes to public education funding, that's where the problem is. And we talk about the funding. Currently, you are running a school, and then the whole year you allocated 10 cedis. Out of that, from the all levels of education, district, region, and this, and they take a percentage for sports and culture. And you are allocated 2 cedi 50 pesos per child. And out of 2 cedis, 50 pesos per child, the head teacher is supposed to use it to run examination, which no print house will even accept in the first place to print a paper. Then when they are going for sports, it is the same money you are supposed to use to mobilize them from training level up to hiring a car for them to the sports ground.
That's the same money.
The same money, 2 cedis, 50 pesos per child.
2 cedis, 50
pesos,
pesos.
yes. And it's not even paid according to the enrollment you have at that time, because they may use the previous. So as you are more children move to the area you are admitting, the old record is what is used to pay. So I think as of 2018, my school will receive 195 Ghana cedis as a grant.
You mean the capitation grant?
The capitation grant, 195 Ghana cedis. And then that is what...
Like for the whole school?
For the whole school.
How many
students do you have in this?
We have about 250
pupils?
Students at that time.
250 pupils at the basic level?
Yes.
And you receive 195
one of
Ghana cedis?
the private schools in Ghana West. And so 195 Ghana cedis.
Hey.
So as a head teacher, that is what you use to run exam.
How much do you expend on a child?
No, let me come in.
no,
No, please, because I need to correct that. There are 250 students or children.
Yes.
10 cedis per child. That's 2,500. But
That's
these
per
are not
term.
paid. These are not paid all at once. Every quarter, because releases from Ministry of Finance is on quarterly basis. So as and when a certain amount is released, that is what is distributed. So it is not a question of the whole money is paid and therefore that is all that they got.
But you see, that's where the problem is.
That's why I mentioned per term.
Yeah,
because,
per term.
and then
That is what
sometimes
they-
the money comes when you don't even need it because it have come. When school term is almost, our academic year is almost over.
It's over. So
Yes.
why the
when
delay in releasing
if
the
you are head
capitation
teacher
grant?
and you don't have personal resources.
The person, the spending officer, if you don't get the money, how do you spend?
No, but I want to
No,
understand this.
because 2,000, you're supposed to get, let me say 2,500. But this is divided into quarters.
Okay, yes.
Yeah. So what do you do? So
no, his problem is that the money doesn't come when it is needed. So at the beginning of the term, it doesn't come to when the term is about ending. That's when you release or disburse monies to them. It doesn't serve the purpose for
every school in Ghana has account, bank account. So assuming it's late and therefore couldn't perform the task that you're supposed to perform, what happens to the money? So it is the end of the term or end of the year. What happens to the money? Why can't it be rolled over?
No,
That's
but
the
you
issue.
see, it doesn't answer the question I'm asking. If you roll over the money that came in at the end of last term into the next term, it doesn't solve the problem of the previous term starting without the capitation grant. And so then the teachers, and that directly impacts on the delivery of the education to the children. So I think that one we don't have to contend it in any way, because if you are starting a term and you don't have the money.
Can I make a suggestion?
Professor Do.
Yes. So you see, because of this, that's why I just want to make a modification to the pillars. The three pillars we talked about: access, quality, and management.
Management, yeah.
I want to look at it from access, quality, and equity, with management cutting through the three. Access stage, we must ensure, management must ensure efficiency, that people have access to all that they need. Apart from getting them to the classroom, do they have access to all that they need when the capitation grant is coming here? So management efficiency, the thing must be there on time so that it can be used to support learning. And I think that is one point we need to look at as a nation and as a government. Actually, I have done some studies and I realized that one challenge that head teachers in our public schools face is timely supply of logistics, cutting across. And so generally that is one area we need to look at. Then linked to those is the process. In the classroom situation, what really happens to the classroom situation? The textbooks, and then I went to a certain school here too, and that one, I won't mention the place. I went and people had to keep, some head teachers keep some core books in a box in their offices. They don't give them to the pupils. And the reason they give, if the books get destroyed, they are held responsible for that. You see, so I think privatization, commitment to our basic school provision, it is something that policy makers must actually give attention to. And then above all, increasing the budgetary allocation to basic schools. And I would re-emphasize that if we do not increase budgetary provisions to basic schools and ensure that we establish a very strong foundation at the basic school, all other provisions we make will encounter challenge. In this wise, stakeholder collaboration is very important. And PTAs, I think, have supported basic schools, and we need to revisit the idea of not encouraging PTAs to operate. It is very important.
Well, Mr. Nsoa is shaking his head in disagreement, I guess,
the PTA issue.
To this proposal of the PTAs. I mean, taking a second look at the engagement of the PTAs. Why? You think that's not the way to go?
There's no document indicating that PTAs have been abolished. In fact, every school that is built, it starts in the community. And therefore, it's the support of the community that makes the school, viable. What we are saying, or what the current government is saying, is that we have paid for all the expenses of students and pupils. Please, PTAs can organize themselves. But in a situation where PTA dues, that is dues agreed by parents, dues agreed by parents to collect to support the school, becomes a school fees that if your parent doesn't pay,
the PTA,
you don't go to school. Or so some people are denied even examinations, national examinations.
If you owe PTA dues.
You owe PTA dues. So how can any government who has taken up all the responsibilities allow children to be denied access to education because of PTA dues?
Which is not mandatory.
Yeah. That's a voluntary association.
So, Professor, do you get the clarification now? So,
you see, I get it, but that's not the issue. You see, there are challenges, and it doesn't go across all schools that pupils are prevented from writing exams or are sacked because of PTA dues. It happens in some. How do we manage that? I think that's what I meant by management cutting across quality process and quality, access, quality, and equity. We need to tackle that issue. If things are not clear, if the PTAs are not doing the right thing, let's address that issue. Rather, create an environment for PTAs to operate. It's something that I'll create the indulgence because, one, if PTAs, I know some schools where monies and other things that have to go to schools do not come early. But because PTAs have reserve, they are able to support the schools and things go on well. And so I will still insist that we should rethink the PTA participation.
But you see, I think it's a good point you made. Mr. Zoa, you admit, without due respect, you admit that the capitation grant doesn't come in early.
I agree.
Which is, you agree.
Yeah.
How do you expect the schools to fund the activities in the term if the capitation grant sometimes comes at the end of the term and the students still have to engage in these activities?
Now, PTA is a voluntary organization.
Granted.
So how can the ministry or the government make rules for a voluntary organization? All students contribute to the development of schools. They have a very elaborate way of doing that. Sometimes it comes down to year groups. And nobody has sacked any brother of an old student for not contributing to the fund. This is our point. Please, a voluntary organization, we need your support. But we cannot use that support as a register. When schools reopen, if you don't pay your PTA, you don't enter. Meanwhile, everything that the child is going to enjoy in the school has been paid for by government. So why do you?
But
that's why we are saying PTA, please.
But how widespread is that
they
situation?
They should organize their members. We will not allow any PTA in any school to sack students because the opportunity for them is their right and has been paid for.
I think that's clear, and I think Professor Odo agrees that practice certainly cannot.
So how do we organize a voluntary
organization? How do we identify those who are doing this and not generalize the situation?
It is a voluntary organization. Why do we go and make rules for a voluntary organization?
Oh, but I mean, you are preventing the security organization. You are preventing the voluntary organizations from taking dues.
One critical aspect of management is identifying critical stakeholders and negotiating, dialoguing. And I'm very sure that if Ghana Education Service holds a PTA conference with PTAs and look at the issue of teaching and learning and those things that in some ways tend to affront or encroach upon the rights of the learner, and looks at all these things and come out, I'm very sure that PTAs and DAs will come out with rules that will govern operations of all PTs. It's a question of dialoguing, it's a question of negotiating. And this is something that we need to do in the interest of the learner.
Is it
actually get PTAs of management?
Let me bring in Solomana on this particular point, because in as much as government has taken up, Mrs. I keep emphasizing the fact, which is the case, that government has taken up the cost. And so you don't understand why PTA dues should be a barrier to access education, especially amongst the basic and secondary students. If the capitation grant, which is supposed to make up for the absence of PTA dues, does not come in time, it creates another problem, because then the teachers would still ask the students, the pupils, to find a way of getting money. We've reported some of these cases. They have to go and take money from their parents to still come and pay for what the capitation grant was supposed to take care of, because the capitation grant doesn't come in early. Solomana, what's your thoughts on this and how to deal with this situation, sir?
I think it is quite straightforward. The issue of delayed disbursement of capitation grant to schools has been historical. It has been with us for a long time now. We have to sit up as a country and find out what are the bottlenecks for the delayed disbursements. Because our goal at the end of the day is for children to have quality education and not pay anything for it. So if we create situations where teachers have to find alternatives, which will boil back to getting parents to pay, and as a result of which some children may miss out quality education, then we are not achieving the objectives for which the capitation grant was instituted in the first place. So I will go for an analysis to find out the bottlenecks and to address them. The second point is that PTAs, in my view, are not only there to supplement with resources in terms of financial contributions. In my view, PTAs or school management committees are important stakeholders. What matters is for us to create the space for them to continuously engage on the issues of quality education. And with all stakeholders, head teachers, secondary supervisors, education managers, to be able to find out why is the school performing so poorly, or why is it performing so well, so that they can replicate the good practices and deal with problems that are in the system. And where it demands, PTAs should be able to work with the education management to either award well-performing teachers or sanction errant teachers. This way, we will be enhancing accountability for learning outcomes. If we begin from learning outcomes, it will trickle down to every resource that's supposed to be an input to ensure that we achieve learning high learning outcomes. I also have to say that the issue of quality again comes back to the availability of resources. Besides the capitation grant, there are textbooks, and the disbursement of this leaves much to be desired. You go to urban centers, you can get very good textbook people ratios. You go to rural areas, and the textbook people ratio is very bad. So we will have to ensure equity and fairness in the distribution of all resources across every geographical area to ensure that teaching and learning goes on effectively. At the end of the day, we should be looking at what amount of learning is taking place in every public school. When I was a young boy attending school, I'm not that old, in the 70s, accountability was high. Accountability was high. I was in Tamale. There were very few private schools. Nobody preferred the private school to the public school because the quality of learning outcomes was higher in the public schools. What have we missed that is making the public school not delivering as high, as much quality as the private schools are doing? So let's come back to the resources and the efficient utilization of the resources, and that includes the timely disbursement of it, the size of the resource that gets to the point of usage. There are a number of reports, public financial management reports, budget monitoring reports that suggest that the amounts of resources that the schools are not the same amount that gets to many of those. We need to put in mechanism to ensure that all these are correct. And as I keep going back to parents, be they in school management committees or in PTAs, if we keep them informed of what their schools are entitled to, they will be the best people to monitor how much the school has received and how much of it is being utilized, including the capitation grant, books, teachers, everything. So let us do things in a manner that will make the public school work again and compete with all manner of schools when it comes to learning outcomes. And I'm going back to my friend from the Teachers Union. Let's make public schools available to every community in Ghana, such that we don't compel people to opt for private schools where they will have to pay. I was following Media General's parliamentary candidates debate a few days ago in AASU West.
Yes.
One of the questions you threw up was the number of public preschools were said to be around 6 in the whole of the AASU West constituency.
Yes.
And private preschools were in excess of 70.
True.
Why is it the case? Does this not tell us that if you do not have money in certain locations of AASU West constituency, you will not be able to afford preschool education, which is very critical to the quality education we are talking about. So in the first place, let us make the schools available. Let us make it free. Let us make the schools function, and let learning be effective in the schools. And this way, we will be helping to build a well-educated citizenry that is required for our social, political, and whatever development we desire for ourselves as a country.
I thank you very much for this. And you see, this is comprehensive because the absence of all of these things, Mr. Solomon, you have said, directly violates the right of children to have access to quality public education in this country. Mr. Kobe, you wanted to make a point before we went to school.
So we're talking about funding before
Yes.
others came in. Beyond the funding, currently, if schools should open in January, I don't know, we have to start a double track at the basic school level.
You have to start double track at the basic school level.
Yes.
Because
the classrooms are over 100, and they're already running shifts. The least class you'll find in most of these peri-urban and these institutions are 60, 70, and we have in excess of 100 plus packed in a class, and they're already running shifts. So when it's
100 children class, in a class.
Yes, on
and
average.
they're already running the morning and afternoon shift.
Yes.
I thought that was abolished.
Oh, it's not abolished. It's still happening across urban centers. And so that also have direct impact on the quality of teaching, because if you are a teacher, remember in that classroom are children with intellectual disability who need special attention. We have children with dysgraphia who cannot write, so they need some devices and then special attention from the teacher. And then we also have children with attention deficit hyperactive disorder. So these children cannot sit for 10, 15 minutes without getting out because they easily get irritated and want to get up. So if you pack these children, 4 or 5, in one desk, because
you
of
have
space.
4 or 5 children.
Yes, in one desk.
On one desk.
Because of space.
In a public basic school.
Yes.
Which area is this?
It's across the country. If you send your mission team around the urban centers, the peri-urban, these areas, you could see that is
in
common.
In fact, I can mention a school in Begbese. Begbese is a community that falls within your peri-urban description that you're putting. We reported a situation like that about 2 years ago. I don't know if the situation has changed, but that was with 2 children on a desk. And you say that you have situations where 4 or 5 children share a desk.
Yes, the teacher cannot get to the last person at the back.
At the kindergarten level.
From the, we had a situation where a school, I may not mention the name here, KG2, 72 children in one classroom. 72 children? Yes, for KG2.
KG, kindergarten 2?
Kindergarten 2, there were 72. And then they had to, these children, the teachers had to write their assignment, everything for them. So you can imagine the duration it will take for you to complete one exercise in a day. So that is a big challenge when it comes to education. So when people are comparing private education to public school, they are comparing mangoes and apples.
Obviously, I mean,
the two don't match. So in the midst of all this, you have a funding problem. And so,
but Mr. So, are you aware of this? That you have 4 children, KG2, sharing a desk. The public basic
we
school.
need that information to cross-check.
But I don't think I doubt him. I don't think I doubt him.
I don't know when
they have quarterly returns that the heads provide every day. So if you go to ME's department, GS headquarters, and you take these areas where the public schools are not many.
Yes.
You know, some parents, despite the fact that people make case that a lot of parents want quality, so they want their children to. There's still a number, quite a number of them who will not want their children to go to private school. So. If within some 6-7 kilometers, and this is a developed area, people move in on daily basis and want schools for their children, and that's the only public school there. They have only 6 unit classroom block for primary and 3 unit classroom block for JHS. It means that you, a head teacher, cannot deny per constitutional provision Absolutely. The right to education. So you have to take them and then try to deal with the situation.
And that's where the issue of building more schools now becomes the solution.
Very good. And
not necessarily the 1 kilometer range, but you have at least 2 or more in a community where you have just 1 school. So, are you aware of this situation? First off, if you are, how has the council been addressing such issues? I mean, the Ghana Education Service.
You see, until the issue comes to council, measures would have been taken already by management. There's the management and there's the council. Yes, if it is beyond that, if there's the need for intervention on a big scale, then of course it comes to council, and the council goes to the ministry to see what can be done. If there should be an emergency project, we call it emergency project. I don't know when he picked this I'll be happy. Maybe if you won't mention
if you take
when
my
we finish.
municipality, for example, we had
Which municipality?
Ganwes.
Okay.
Ganwes.
Okay.
We had a municipal education oversight committee to look at how schools will reopen next academic year, and that was one of the biggest challenges that we face.
Fine. You see,
Yes.
And
So
you
schools
put all those concerns together. There's a district directorate of education.
Yes.
And they are aware of this.
They are aware. But the issue is that when you, the head teacher, write to the education director, you have to pass the information to them. They are not development officers. You to go to the assembly. If you look at our system, building of infrastructure for basic education has been left largely in the hand of the disassemblies, who are also financially handicapped. So because the DC will not want to say that in his municipality, these are the challenges, they'll try to contain it, and then become the issue that the teachers have to deal with.
You see, I want to.
Let me cut in here, because we have a committee that is looking at what needs to be done in order for children to, in order for schools to reopen. And this thing started about 4 months ago.
I see.
So we are looking at all this, and where I use the term emergency, where there's the need for an emergency project to be able to overcome some of these things. It has to be reported to the district education, because we are collating.
No, he's saying that the district directorate of education in Ganwes is aware. They are aware of this. That's what he's saying.
No. When was this information given to the? Because this education that they cannot.
This an age-old this thing that I'm talking about.
Something that's new. I mean, that's what the concern is. So they're saying that the district directorate of education,
that is one area that a lot of people are moving it at. So
is aware.
Infrastructure development is matching up with the rate at which population is increasing there, then we are solving the problem. But it's like there's a disconnect between the solving the problem and then this. And it's not only in my municipality, because it's cut across.
True. In fact, I'm going to show you something right now. I am to buttress the point that you're making. Yes, Mr. Solomon, I want the viewers to see this. We have a video evidence of what Mr. Covey is talking about, and we are showing it on television right now. This is a school in the peri-urban community, and the children, see, they are sitting on benches, not even desks, bench, 5, 6 of them without a table, and they have to use their laps as tables to write. So you are seeing it.
Yeah, I'm seeing
this
it.
This is in the Bono East region.
Yeah.
You can see the videos.
No, I can see it. I see it on the television. Now, when was this discovered? Because so many projects are going on as we speak.
No, the
I don't know which school.
Obviously.
Yeah, but you see, we have picked. You remember this?
This is Lemu.
This thing started
Bono East,
even before this government came into being, which was classified as under trees, schools under trees, and all these projects, schools under trees, to a large extent, have been taken care of. But I wouldn't say
all of
because I don't know.
This is Lemu.
I don't know. I don't know this area. So,
Professor Dro and the Suleimana. Yes, Prof. Come in.
I think that listening to Mr. Nsonwa, the Chairman of Council's rich explanation, it means that there is a missing gap somewhere. It means the monitoring evaluation unit of Ghana Business Service is not doing its work well. But these things should be something that should be captured by the monitoring and evaluation unit and inform the appropriate quarters, so this can be addressed. So it's something that I think we have to look at that unit, the work they do. Right. Then quickly, adding to this, Francois suggested that one of the things you could do to avert the delays in supplies is to is to do analysis to find out what actually causes that. And I bet and humbly say that we don't need analysis to know the causes of delays. I think we are all aware of the causes of delays. One, and I also say that it's the commitment and priority that we give to basic education. If we committed and we prioritize, then definitely we will ensure that the Ministry of Finance give out the money on time so that head teachers will be saved the burden of having to be running around trying to settle people and all this. So let us, I think as the council, I will humbly suggest that council should engage the ministry so they work against it, because head teachers really suffer, but a number of them cannot talk. But we fear that if you talk, you'll be seen as complaining too much, and anything can happen to you. So let us do that. I also quickly, I have another meeting, so let me quickly land.
Right, that's fine. That's fine.
I also think that we need, as a nation, to commit ourselves to the needs of schools, the needs of learners, rather than political interest. Why am I saying this? You come out to review curriculum, the curriculum is rolled out, no textbooks, and yet head teachers are to ensure that provisions of the curriculum are implemented. This raises challenges of equity and affects quality. So I think that as a nation, we should do things taking into consideration the needs and learning needs of the learners and the schools. So we do not rush things. If we do that and prioritize basic education in terms of budgetary allocation, in terms of management, then we'll be helping the basic schools. And lastly, regarding the low cost fee private school agenda, I think if these people have money to support Ghana government to enhance quality, then the target should be public basic schools. Public basic schools. So that the money that will be sent to the private schools to pay 5 cities and all those, if all these monies are channeled to identify needy public schools, then we'll be enhancing quality. So these are the suggestions that I will make. But let's prioritize basic schools.
So for you, in conclusion, Professor Drew, privatizing basic schools is not the way to go. You want a prioritizing. Prioritizing of the funding and not the privatization of it. I thank you, Professor Doe, for your time this evening. I appreciate it.
Very sorry, I can't do it.
That's all right. That's fine. I think you made your point very, very clear on this. So we can say that the NDC, for instance, you are not for privatization of basic education in this country. But Ms. Sulemana, you wanted to... Okay, right. Ms. Sulemana, you wanted to make a point.
Yes. I just wanted to add that there seems to be a kind of disconnect between policymakers at the national level and those who operationalize the policies at the district level. And I'm saying so because NGOs are coming out with a number of innovations that are helping not only to expand access, but also the quality of education. We in Oxfam, for instance, have piloted and tested what we call the wing school model. And we use that to help communities that do not have access to schools at all. They live between 5 to 10 kilometers from the nearest public school. And we work with them to start schools in their communities with the aim of providing the first 3 years of primary education using school leavers. And these school leavers teach using mother tongue. And I can tell you that if you go to the Saboba district, if you go to the East Gonja district, if you go to the Bushegu district, we have through this model sent thousands of children to school. What needs to be done is that we are working with GES at the district level, but they don't have the power to sanction some of these models.
Right.
And so it will be very good for policymakers at the top to connect with the GES at the local level in order to see what is working so that we can adopt some of the innovations, like government has adopted the complementary basic education model. The second point I want to make is all about what do we do to ensure that the needs of schools are really addressed. We are a country that is pursuing a decentralized management system. But those of us who sometimes work on the field do not see that working out fully. Let us promote the decentralization to the extent that resources are indeed made available to people or education managers at the local level, and that they have the opportunity to take decisions to use resources to address the direct learning needs of children in their districts or in their circles or in their schools. If we do that, we will be helping to address the issue of quality in public schools to a very large extent.
Mr. Labana, thank you for this. Mr. Zoa, you wanted to react to a number of things that Mr. Kofi touched on, and then
well, maybe this low fee schools.
Yes, but before that, this one here said that this capitation grant was introduced as far back as 2004, I think, by the Kufuor administration, if I'm right, to replace, and just for our listener viewers who understand this, to replace the tuition fees, sort of, in public basic schools. Now, it started from...
No, not tuition fees. Tuition fees has always been free since 1961.
Textbook fees and other things.
So nobody
we
charged.
started
but
with
school levies.
And other things, other costs that was a barrier for basic pupils across the public basic schools. Okay. It started from 4 cities, 50 pesos, I think.
It started from 3 cities.
3 cities, and then increased to 4 cities, 50 pesos.
Yeah.
And almost 16 years on, it's 10 cities. 10 cities. Mr. Zoa, I mean, why?
The original idea was that sometimes head teachers need some money on hand to do certain things. Apparently, when the calculation was done, it did not include, for example, examinations.
Right.
It did not include examinations.
Oh.
So this is how far we've come. And the examinations take a major chunk. Right now, the ministry has supplied all district offices with ristograph or something, which can print all the questions in the district.
I remember that.
And so now the issue of examination fee being part of the people who have agreed to do this job then go and collect the money from the GES. Now, but I was talking about the low fee.
The low fee. What Oxfam and other leading education they are asking is that you increase the GDP contribution to education by at least 7%. Is that possible?
Well, that's up to the cabinet.
But you are the chair of the council of the Ghana Education Service. We do our calculation.
As I said, for instance, this burden on schools to print questions have been taken away from us. So, well, there are so many. But any school that is collecting fees is not registered as a school in Ghana. Let me say this. Any school that is collecting money or fees is not registered.
I mean, you mean
somebody is doing it privately. From this discussion, I've become aware of something like that in the system. And we'll have to, because people are putting children together as a school and they are collecting daily fees. Because we read the Constitution. It's free and compulsory. We should go to school. If there is no school within a certain catchment area, and therefore somebody has established a school to collect fees on daily basis or weekly basis, it's an illegal activity that is going on there.
It's an illegal activity?
Illegal activity. Any school registered in Ghana is free. Nobody pays fees. let me say, nobody pays fees. Even for a private school, you need to register with the Ministry of Education. And therefore, any school that is doing that on daily basis, I mean, and looking at the level of economic,
Right.
hardship, it is not something that any GES office will approve of any school like that. So,
Interesting.
with this information,
so
we'll have to follow up and see what's going on.
Important, very important. So this Ghana Partnership Schools project, which was supposed to have taken off in September
There's no
last
Ghana
year.
Partnership School. What we have rather is the SIP and the Gallop. The SIP is Secondary Education Improvement Program,
The focus
targeting schools that are not doing well at the secondary level.
how about the basic?
Pardon? The basic, the Gallop. Ghana Accountability Learning and Social.
So
And also targeting 10,000 schools. The aim is to also help all those schools that are not doing well to be able to come up. And funds are provided, training of teachers is done, and everything is done to improve the performance of these schools. So we don't have school partnership with anybody. It's a support from World Bank and other donor partners that are helping to improve the performance of these low-performing schools.
I see. I'm only conveying the concerns of a lot of the teacher unions, including NAGRAT, about this increasing cases of privatization and commercialization of basic schools in this
There's
country.
no privatization
anyway. And this whole...
that handing over schools to organizations to run.
So their fears are misplaced. That's what you're saying.
No, but he told us some time ago.
Okay.
The discussion was going on, and I think...
so it's not going to happen?
No.
Thank you. Mr. Govey, finally.
Yeah. So on the issue of Gallop, I think the last time we had a stakeholder engagement, I raised the issue that I raised here earlier on. And the one in charge was like, it's meant for management. So, okay, fine. If we are looking at quality, and then we are talking about accountability. Accountability is a two-way traffic.
Yeah.
So you give to somebody and you demand accountability from him.
Certainly.
So the question I put there is, schools that have highly congested classrooms and with these challenges, do you have anything in the Gallop fund that will take care of making sure we have...
How to tackle it. Michael Nsowa is the chairman of the Ghana Education Service Council, joining us in the studio, as well as Mr. Richard Koshi-Covey, who is an executive member of the Campaign Against Privatization and Commercialization of Education, and is a member of the National Association of Graduate Teachers, NAGRAT. I also had on Zoom, joining us this afternoon, Zakaria Sulemana, West African Regional Education Advisor, Oxfam International, and then also Professor George K.T. Odro, is a Professor of Educational Leadership at the University of Cape Coast, joining us via Zoom as well. My name is Alfred Okanse, and thank you very much for staying with us here on your election command Saturday. These are some of these meaningful conversations you're going to be having ahead of the elections with borders on our development as a country. Stay with us on TV3. Good afternoon.
The search is on for Africa's finest supermarket.